Hello everybody, how you doing? This is Joe from PrepAgent. Today is Wednesday, and we are going over laws of agency. So give me a thumbs up if you could hear me. Okay, so we're all ready to go. All right, so who could tell me the essentials of an agency relationship? Who could tell me the essentials of an agency relationship? What do you guys think? The essentials of an agency relationship. Aloha, Kim and West. Okay, what do you guys think are those essentials? So I see Lacey says a cold. So what does that stand for? Lacey's on the right path of what I'm looking for. So what does that stand for, Lacey? What does a cold stand for? What do you guys think? Speaking of which, I have a cold. So what we're looking for is accountability, confidentiality, obedience, loyalty, and disclosure. Accountability, confidentiality, obedience, loyalty, and disclosure. Those are the essentials of an agency relationship. Okay? Now, when you guys hear this agency relationship, very often you hear the word fiduciary. What does a fiduciary mean? What do you guys think a fiduciary means? What does that mean? What is a fiduciary? Okay, a fiduciary, the big thing is loyalty. Loyalties. So now you know what the definition of fiduciary is. It's when you're putting somebody's interests above and beyond your own and you're loyal to them. What is the difference between a client and a customer? A client and a customer. I'll give you guys a hint. A client is the same thing as a principal. In case you guys are wondering, they're the same thing. So what is the difference between a client and a customer? Who knows? So a client, you owe that fiduciary relationship with. A customer, you just have to be fair and honest with them. You obviously can't lie to them. But a client, you owe that fiduciary relationship. Okay, has everybody got that? So, using a listing as an example, if you guys get a listing, then the seller is your client and the buyer is the customer. You can't lie to the customer, but you still have to be fair and honest with them. But the seller is who you have that fiduciary relationship with. Okay, has everybody got that? Some people get that confused. I know we did for a while, but we figured it out, and now we're sharing with you what we learned. So what does a listing hire you to do? What do you guys think a listing hires you to do? What do you guys think? What does a listing hire you to do? A listing hires you to find a buyer. You're not being hired to sell the house. How many of you guys hear that all the time from real estate agents? I got a listing, I got hired to sell their house. You guys ever hear that before? How many agents do you come across that get so many things wrong? Okay, so very often you'll hear agents say, I have a listing and I'm hired to sell their house. Why is that not accurate when they say that? Okay, why is that not accurate? Oh, looks like Rachel nailed it. It's because very simply, it's not their house. It's not their house. They can't sell it. All they could do is bring a buyer. And if they bring a buyer, it's the seller's decision if they want to proceed with that buyer and follow through with selling their house, the seller's house. Right, guys? So technically you're there to find a buyer. You don't sell somebody's home, even though people say that all the time. Super annoying that they say that. Okay, so a listing, you are hired to find a buyer. Okay? Now, a listing is an employment contract. Does everybody realize that? It's an employment contract. Right? It's an independent contractor employment contract. Okay, and you're being employed to find a buyer. Now let's look at the question on the board. Excuse me, guys. To whom does a listing belong? The seller, the broker and agent, the listing agent, or the broker? What do you guys think? It's the broker. I heard somebody say they hear people in the background. I apologize for that today. I had to go to a different location today. If it's a big problem, I'll transfer this to Adrian to continue the webinar. However, if it's not, I would like to continue with doing the webinar today. So if you guys don't mind, just if you hear people in the background, excuse me for that. There's some construction going on today. So I had to get out of my normal space. Okay, the listing, excuse me, belongs to the broker. The listing belongs to the broker. Now, depending on your state, okay, depending on your state, you may phrase it differently. They have principal brokers and then associate brokers, different things, okay? Now, what is consistent in every state, there's a responsible party and a person who works under that party. Does everybody get that? There's always a responsible party. Most states have that broker-agent relationship. Some have like a broker-associate broker relationship. But in every state, there's two different licenses. And there's always that license that makes you responsible for everybody else. And that's who that listing belongs to. They're the ones legally responsible. That's why you can't sign up with two different brokers, because only one could be responsible for you. Now, on another note, going back to this agent thing, very often we hear these terms special agent and general agent. Special agent and general agent. What is the difference between a special agent and a general agent? What do you guys think? What is the difference between a special agent and a general agent? So a special agent is one task for a limited period of time. A specific task, I should say. Now, a general agent will have specific set of tasks, can be more than one, or it can be just one, but it's a continuous relationship. Has everybody got that? That's a continuous relationship. Can you guys give me an example of a special agent? Like James Bond. They're coming out with a new James Bond, I think. Very exciting. I love James Bond. Okay, so a special agent, give me an example of that. How about a real estate agent? Yeah, what you guys will be. You guys will be special agents, okay? When you sign that listing, you're hired for that one task of finding a buyer. When that buyer is found, the deal is done, the relationship ends. So everybody got that? Another example would be like an accountant. I see somebody else mention an accountant. That'd also be a great example. Can you guys give me an example of a general agent? Give me an example of a general agent. Give me an example of a general agent. So a general agent is a property manager, would be a good real estate example of that. A lawyer could also be an example. Nice job, Susan. But a property manager is the more real estate oriented example because they don't end at a specific period of time. That relationship can be continuous. Okay? All right, we're all participating in the chat. We're all a supportive group, right, everybody? We want everybody to participate, not just the people who've been studying and know everything. We want the people who are new to this, maybe aren't sure of things, maybe feel insecure. We've always had a really supportive group, not only in the chat, but our Facebook group. And even in the comments, when you look at our Instagram or YouTube, the comments, everybody's always really supportive, and it's great in all of our social media. And Adrian, Arthur, and I are super appreciative of that. We've really been super pleasantly surprised to have people that are so community oriented who want to help each other. And I really hope you guys continue that after you pass. It's a great thing to be able to bounce ideas off people who are in other states and other cities who are outside of your little bubble, so that you can maybe bring new ideas to your community and get ahead of the people you actually are competing with. So you always want to do that. Keep in touch with people who are in other communities, and maybe they're doing something in that community that people are not doing in yours, and you can bring that and be a little ahead of the game. Okay. Which of the following would not be required payment for the lessee under a net lease? A, property taxes, B, insurance, C, janitorial expenses, or D, lease commission? So A, property taxes, B, insurance, C, janitorial expenses, or D, lease commission? And the answer is lease commission. On a net lease, you pay for tax, insurance, and maintenance. The janitorial expenses, I guess in this question, they're putting that as part of maintenance. Okay? Now, there's different types of leases you learn for the exam. Who knows what they are? So one is this net lease. We just went over this. There's three others that you guys learn when studying for your exam. What do you guys think those are? There are three others you guys learn when studying for your exam. So gross lease is one. Good. Percentage lease would be another. And the sandwich lease would be the third. So in total, there's four that you guys should be aware of. A net lease, a gross lease, a sandwich lease, and a percentage lease. Out of those four that I just named, which one is the most common on residential properties? So out of those four that I just mentioned, which one would be the most common on residential properties? So that would be the gross lease, because you pay a set amount. You pay a set amount. All right? Now, the next one would be that percentage lease, which would be more for commercial real estate, because you're paying a percentage of your gross receipts. You're paying a percentage of the money coming in. Has everybody got that? You're paying a percentage of your money coming in. Okay. And a sandwich lease, what do you guys think of a sandwich lease? What is a sandwich lease? What do you guys think? A sandwich lease is also known as subletting. So we would define that by saying the lessor is also the lessee. The lessor is also the lessee. The lessor is also the lessee. Okay, because you live there, you still are in debt to the landlord, but you have a tenant that's in debt to you. And generally speaking, you could always sublet unless otherwise stated. Okay, unless otherwise stated in the contract, you could sublet. The reason people get that wrong a lot because in every standard lease agreement, or just about everyone, I shouldn't say everyone, almost everyone, it states that you cannot sublet. That's why people think you can't sublet. What they don't realize, it's basically in a standard lease agreement. It says you cannot sublet without the permission of the landlord. Does everybody get that? So just to be clear, you can sublet unless otherwise stated, and typically it is stated. All right? Everybody got that? Okay. An unlicensed personal assistant working for a licensed broker may do which of the following activities? A, write up an offer for a buyer and have the broker sign the contract later. B, write ads and submit them to a newspaper and online. C, host open houses. Or D, email brokers weekly updates to the broker's clients. What do you guys think? Okay, and the answer is write ads and submit them to a newspaper and online. This is a very tricky one. You get people who are not licensed helping brokers, okay? And I would check with your local state authority about the specifics of this, and definitely if you're helping a broker. But generally speaking, the deal is you could help a broker, but the line stops that you cannot solicit business. That's the whole deal. You cannot solicit business. Now, for more details, check with your local authority and whatnot. But it's a very gray area about unlicensed people, what they can and cannot do. So, but to play it safe for you guys, as you guys practice real estate and get more involved, you can't solicit business. You can't start talking to clients and naming prices and things of that nature. It's basically that contact with the clients or potential clients where it gets really dicey. But here, all they're doing is writing ads, submitting it to the newspaper. They're not really dealing with any clients. I can even argue as an unlicensed person, you could hold an open house, but that wasn't the best answer in the previous question. And what I mean by that is if you just open the door and make sure people don't steal anything, you're essentially holding the open house. What you cannot do is walk around the open house and start soliciting business from all the people seeing the house. And that's what I mean by that gray area you guys got to be careful about. So that previous question says hold an open house. But if there was no better option or something, we could look at details and overanalyze that to think of a concept where if you're just literally opening the house, letting people in and making sure they don't steal anything and letting them out, you don't need a license to do that. All right? Does that make sense? But they say you need a license to hold an open house because there's an assumption that holding an open house means you're talking to people and you're selling the place to them in an effort to have them become a buyer. Has everybody got that? So be careful with that. That's a gray area that catches a lot of people off guard. Okay, Kim Ann says, can they stage it? Yeah, you don't need a license to stage an open house. In case you guys don't know what that means, that just means you're putting furniture and making it look pretty. You're not actually dealing with clients. Your client is the agent, not the prospective buyers. Which of the following is not essential to the creation of an agency relationship? A, agreement to pay consideration. B, competency of the principal. C, a fiduciary relationship. Or D, consent of the principal. What do you guys think? Which of the following is not essential to the creation of an agency relationship? A, agreement to pay consideration. B, competency of the principal. C, a fiduciary relationship. Or D, consent of the principal. And the answer is agreeing to pay consideration. When we started the webinar today, we said the essentials of a valid agency agreement, and we said nothing about consideration. Okay? The other ones you can kind of fit with and coordinate with the other three. I mean, just think, when you guys sign a listing, okay, to find a buyer, typically you don't get any money until after that buyer comes. And that buyer may never come, right, guys? But that doesn't change the fact you have an agency relationship with that seller. Has everybody got that? So if you sign a listing and you're working with the seller, you have fiduciary duty to them. And if a buyer doesn't come, you can't all of a sudden start bad-mouthing them because you're like, well, I never got a commission, or there's no money involved right now, so I'm going to tell everybody that you stink and you're a big liar and there's a hole in your roof. Okay? So if you think about it in those terms, that makes sense. There's not always money involved when you have that agency relationship. Does that make sense for everybody? So if you have a listing and you're struggling to find a buyer, that doesn't automatically end the agency relationship. Okay, a prospect for the lease of commercial property feels the need for adversarial representation and hires a broker to negotiate the lease on his behalf. What is the name of the contract entered in between the prospect and the broker? A, a buyer-broker agreement. B, an authorization to negotiate. C, a cooperative broker agreement. Or D, a property management agreement. And the answer is A, a buyer-broker agreement. In this case, your fiduciary duty would be to the buyer if it was a buyer-broker agreement. The buyer would become the client. Does everybody get that? The buyer would become the client in that situation. Now, when we talk about listings, we sometimes bring it up when we talk about contracts. But it also comes up when we talk about agency relationships because there is that contract element of what is bilateral, unilateral, and agreement to pay consideration and all that kind of stuff. But it also implies what the agent has the authority to do and not do and what their realm of responsibility is. Okay? So when you have a listing, there's different types of listing. Listings go into two categories. What are they? Two categories. What do you guys think? A listing goes into two categories. Who knows what they are? Nice job, Rachel. So the listing two categories are exclusive and open. Exclusive and open. So you have exclusive listings and open listings. What is the difference between an exclusive listing and an open listing? Who knows? Excuse me. What is the difference between an exclusive listing and an open listing? What do you guys think? So an exclusive listing would mean that one broker is hired. Okay, exclusive listing means that only one broker can be hired. And open listings means you can have as many as you want. You could have multiple brokers. So which one of those two would need a defined termination date? An exclusive listing or an open listing? Which one of those two would need a definite termination date? An exclusive listing or an open listing? What do you guys think? So the exclusive listing would need the definite termination date. Because in an open listing, if you're not happy with your broker, you could bring on another broker without terminating any agreement with the previous broker. Whereas with exclusive listing, okay, you have an agreement with a broker. And if you sign another exclusive listing with another broker, you could owe 2 commissions. You could owe 2 commissions, okay? Because you signed 2 agreements that say you're going to work with only them, and if they find a buyer, they're getting paid. Excuse me, if the listing sells, they're getting paid. All right, now the exclusive listings get divided up into 2 different types of exclusive listings. Do you know what they are? The exclusive listings get divided up into 2 different types of exclusive listings. What are they? So you would have exclusive right to sell and exclusive agency. Exclusive right to sell and exclusive agency. Both of them involve only one broker. So what is the difference between an exclusive right to sell listing and an exclusive agency listing? What do you guys think? What is the difference between an exclusive right to sell listing and an exclusive agency listing? So the difference is exclusive right to sell is you get paid no matter what. And what I mean by no matter what is if somebody buys the house, you get paid. Exclusive agency means if the seller sells it themselves, you get nothing. You get nothing. So we basically discussed 3 ways you could sign this agreement to create your agency relationship. You have the exclusive right to sell, exclusive agency, and open listing. Which one of those 3 do you not have to prove that you're the procuring cause of the buyer? Which one of those 3 do you not have to prove that you're the procuring cause of the buyer? What do you guys think? Which of those 3 do you not have to prove? The answer would be exclusive right to sell. So which one do you think is the most common when you guys get your listings as a residential real estate agent, which is what most of us are going to be? Obviously, some of us will do different types of real estate, but the majority of us will go into residential. What type of listing do you think is the most common? And the answer would be exclusive right to sell. Exclusive right to sell is the most common one, and you see it on top of the listing contract, exclusive right to sell. All right, good job, everybody. A salesperson takes a listing which does not authorize the listing broker to accept a deposit from an offer towards purchase of the property. The broker should advise the salesperson that A, it is implied right of a broker to accept a deposit in behalf of the seller on any offer. B, a deposit will be accepted and retained by the broker for the offer, but only as an agent for the offeror. C, it is implied right of a broker to deny the deposit for legal liability. Or D, the broker will not be able to accept the deposit from the offeror. What do you guys think? And the answer is B. The deposit will be accepted and retained by the broker from the offer, but only as an agent of the offeror. If you take money from somebody and you were not authorized to do that on behalf of the seller, then basically you're holding the money of a buyer and you have nobody to give it to. Okay? So you have a seller, and then you say, I got a deposit. And the seller says, I never told you to get a deposit, which is essentially what this question is saying. The seller says, I never told you to do that. So in that moment, you are an agent of the buyer because you have their money. You just create a fiduciary relationship with them. The law is written that way because you're holding their money. That's one of those trick questions that confuses people a lot. So you got to read that a little carefully and understand what they're talking about here. And what they're trying to get you to understand is you can't just take people's money and walk around with it if you were not authorized to do so. If you're holding somebody's money, you created a relationship with those people. Where really, in all reality, if you're not authorized to take a deposit, you shouldn't be taking it at all. So the broker in this situation created a big oops. All right, does everyone understand that? Why that's a tricky question? But it's an important question. I think it's good that they ask you that question because I think it's important that real estate agents know that you don't just take people's money and not understand the implications of, holding on to people's money. All the following are essentials to the creation of an agency relationship except A, fiduciary relationship, B, agreement to pay consideration, or C, competent parties, or D, agreement between principal and agent. I know my mom called. I try and tell her not to call during webinars, but she still doesn't understand what a webinar is. She's always like, who are you talking to? She's in her 80s. Try explaining to somebody in their 80s what a webinar is. It's good for a good comic skit for about 5 minutes. Okay, B, agreement to pay consideration. We talked about this before. I actually posted a picture of my mom on our Instagram. You guys could check that out. She's always like, how do you help people? I'm like, well, it's a class. Where? It's online. Where's that? On the internet. How do you do it on the internet? Blah, blah. And then eventually I'm just like, Okay, the principal to whom a real estate agent gives advice and counsel is A, customer, B, subagent, C, client, or D, fiduciary. The principal to whom a real estate agent gives advice and counsel is A, customer, B, subagent, C, client, D, fiduciary. C, client. Usually most nearly means A, making loans without the benefit of a cosigner, B, being capable of multiple usage, C, lending money on fluctuating interest rates, or D, illegal interest. So usually most nearly means A, making loans without the benefit of a cosigner, B, being capable of multiple usage, C, lending money at a fluctuating interest rate, or D, illegal interest. So we'd also call this loan sharking. We also call this loan sharking. You guys may have heard that. What is the Facebook group for people who want to begin to build their business? We have a new agents Facebook group. I didn't see who asked that. I saw that scroll up. Just look up PrepAgent new real estate agent group on Facebook. And we have a group for that. Thank you, Adrian. Adrian just posted it. Adrian's the best. Speaking of, Adrian's doing the webinar tomorrow. Or maybe I'll do it. I'm not sure. I'll have to talk to him about that. Okay, if an agency relationship, the person identified as the client is usually the A, customer, B, principal, C, subagent, or D, fiduciary. What do you guys think? An agency relationship, the person identified as the client is usually the A, customer, B, principal, C, subagent, or D, fiduciary. And the answer is principal. Remember, guys, principal and a client is the same thing. When the law prescribes the rights and duties between a property manager and his clients, A, the law of agency, B, the statute of frauds, C, the Fair Housing Act, or D, statute of limitations. So what law prescribes the rights and duties between a property manager and his clients? A, the law of agency, B, the statute of frauds, C, the Fair Housing Act, or D, the statute of limitations. And the answer is the law of agency. So that's a great question to end things on today since we were talking about agency. Statute of frauds obviously says what must be in writing. Fair housing has to do with discriminatory practices, which we learn when we do the practice and disclosure webinar. And statute of limitations has to do with time limits. So with that being said, for Adrian, Arthur, and I, this is Joe with PrepAgent. We'll be back tomorrow at 4 o'clock Pacific time, 7 o'clock East Coast time, and you guys do the math wherever you are in between. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day. Bye.